Hi Kovo, I actually saw your DM this morning, but I just didn't have time to get back to it. I think I am going to take my time, and later tonight or tomorrow, if that's okay, I'll answer your question.
I was wondering what your favorite thing about DBD is, and what would you attribute its success to?
So I really want to know what your favorite thing about the game is and what you would attribute its success to.
What's my favorite thing about the game?
What is your favorite thing about the game? And what would you attribute its success to?
What do you like most about DBD, and what do you attribute its success to?
Want to know what's your favorite thing about the game, and what would I attribute its success to?
What is your favorite thing about DBD, and what would you attribute its success to?
What's your favorite thing about DBD, and what would you attribute its success to?
And I really want to know what your favorite thing about the game is and what you would attribute its success to.
If you could travel back to 2016 and look at Dead by Daylight, you might not even recognize the game we play today. Picture this: a world of infinite loops, flashlights that could blind a killer instantly, and a world where a single offering could let killers moor you on your very first down. This is the story of how Dead by Daylight went from a broken yet charmingly chaotic indie game to the asymmetrical horror giant it is today. We're going to break down the game's biggest wins, its most controversial failures, and hear from some of the community's biggest names as we journey from its wild launch all the way to its massive shifts in the modern era. Let's break down the only game that can truly kill Dead by Daylight. Quickly before we get into the breakdown, I wanted to take a second to thank all of the creators that helped me make this video by taking my questions and voicing their opinions. You're all such a huge part of this game that we love, and I couldn't have done this without you. Thank you all for your part in making this game great. So welcome, friends and foes, survivors and killers. Let's gather around the campfire and begin.
I think DBD's success comes from the progression and kind of like the casualness of the game. I don't know. There's a lot of versatility to the game. There's a lot of depth, right? If I want to play like Orbital Huntress, I play Orbital Huntress. If I want to play like Scratch Mirror Mars, I play Scratch Mirror Mars. The versatility, the different playstyles that you have are really nice to have. Really nice in the game. I liked how like playing Killer feels completely different from playing Survivor, right? So if you want to play DBD casually, you play Survivor. If you want like a bit more of a challenge, you play Killer. Like a Dark Souls experience. It's like an all-around type of thing. You have a choice.
Mitskull's answer to the question, my favorite thing about DBD is the variability it has. How a simple game in concept is so different match to match due to the map, RNG, add-ons, and perks. I think the success of Dead by Daylight has to do with how simple it is to pick up and watch. So content creators, streamers in specific, helped make the game grow so much. I know various top dogs in Spain play DBD for fun in their variety streams. And obviously, licenses. They put so many eyes to the game. Myers was a huge success, and the rest were also quite big. To understand where Dead by Daylight is today, we have to go back to the very beginning. In June 2016, the Canadian developer Behavior Interactive dropped a new kind of monster into the multiplayer scene. The premise was simple and brilliant. One player steps into the blood-soaked boots of a savage killer, tasked with hunting down 4 other players, the survivors, and sacrificing them to a mysterious, malevolent force known as the Entity. The survivors weren't fighters, they were prey. Their goal was to work together, repair 5 generators to power the exit gates, and escape without being caught, tortured, and killed. The initial roster was small, featuring 3 original killers, the Trapper, the Wraith, and the Hillbilly, as well as 4 original survivors. The atmosphere was thick, genuinely scary, and the stories that came out of each match were electric. You'd have moments of sheer terror as the Hillbilly's chainsaw roared in the distance, followed by heroic unhooks and desperate last-second escapes. But again, let's be honest, the game was fundamentally broken. Early gameplay was a wild west of exploits. Maps were littered with infinites, which are safe loops that a survivor could run around endlessly where a killer could never hope to catch them. On top of that, pallets, which are the survivor's main defense, were absolutely everywhere, creating fortresses that were nearly impossible for a killer to break through. On the flip side, some of the killer mechanics were just as busted. Being able to mori a survivor after the first down, face camping a hooked survivor being almost encouraged, and hit detection felt more like a suggestion than a rule. The community that formed around the game was a strange mix of horror fans and competitive players, all drawn to the unique asymmetrical design. They loved the game's core, but they were also its toughest critics. Forums and the new subreddit were flooded with clips of absurd bugs and heated debates about balance. By all rights, Dead by Daylight should have faded away, just another interesting indie idea that couldn't handle its own technical problems. But Behavior did something crucial. They listened. They started a cycle of updates showing they were committed to fixing their broken darling. And just when it seemed like the game's initial spark might burn out, they made a move that would change everything and kick off the game's first great rebirth.
I think that the game is obviously very unique. It has basically no competitors at all, which is kind of wild. And even though the devs from like a balance perspective are not very good at their job, they are able to pump out some of the most aggressive content I've ever seen in my life. Like, their content machine right now is so savage that I think it'll pretty much just keep the game going. Keep it going.
Refined says, my favorite thing about DBD is the variety between games, ranging from wholesome encounters and really close matches. For its success, I would probably say the licenses are a huge part of the growth. Taking Five Nights at Freddy's as an example, we saw a massive boom of players. By late 2016, the novelty was starting to wear off for some, and the player base, while dedicated, was struggling to grow. The game needed a shot in the arm, something to bring back the fear and excitement of the early days. Behavior's answer wasn't just another update, it was a brilliant licensing move that would become the cornerstone of the game's identity. In October 2016, just in time for Halloween, Michael Myers entered the fog. The Halloween chapter was more than just DLC, it was a statement. It brought one of the most iconic horror villains of all time into the game, along with his legendary nemesis, Laurie Strode. This wasn't some generic slasher, it was The Shape. His gameplay was revolutionary. His Evil Within mechanic let him stalk survivors from a distance, powering himself up from a slow, nearly undetectable specter into an unstoppable force that could down survivors in a single hit. He completely changed how the game was played. Suddenly, looking over your shoulder wasn't just a good idea, it was essential for survival. The impact was immediate and huge. The arrival of Michael Myers brought a massive wave of new and returning players. Horror fans who'd never even heard of Dead by Daylight were suddenly interested. It proved that this game could be more than just a collection of original characters, it could be a living museum of horror, a hall of fame where the genre's greatest icons could clash. This first rebirth set a new precedent. The community now saw the game's true potential. Every few months, the question wasn't just what new killer are we getting, but what horror legend is next. The strategy of blending original content with the blockbuster licenses gave Dead by Daylight a unique cultural footprint. It had found its formula for long-term success, but as the game grew, its problems evolved, leading to new frustrations and the game's first real identity crisis.
I think genuinely one of the things that makes DBD successful is just there's no other game really like it, and it's really fun to pull friends into it as well. I think Dead by Daylight is more fun in numbers, and I think legitimately the multiplayer experience and finding so many people. I've made so many friends from DBD. Even when the friends still don't play DBD, we've still maintained that bond. But I also feel like it's like the Smash Bros of horror. I mean, you're not gonna find anything like DBD that has as many licenses and as many constant and consistent updates. You really don't, you know?
What's my favorite thing about the game? Know it.
From 2017 to 2019, Dead by Daylight went through a period of explosive growth. After the success of Halloween, the floodgates opened. We saw licensed killers like Leatherface from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Freddy Krueger from A Nightmare on Elm Street, alongside terrifying original creations like the Hag, the Doctor, and the Huntress. Each new chapter brought fresh mechanics, new maps, and most importantly, new perks. And it was those perks that started to define the next era of the game, an era dominated by the meta. If you're not familiar, the meta in a game like Dead by Daylight is just the most effective way to play, or the best strategies that players use to win. For a long time, the meta was incredibly rigid, and for many, incredibly frustrating. On the survivor side, a holy trinity of perks became almost mandatory. Self-care let survivors heal themselves without a medkit, which made the game drag on. Decisive Strike gave a survivor a chance to escape the killer's grasp after being unhooked, an anti-tunneling tool that was so powerful it felt like a get-out-of-jail-free card. And Borrow Time gave newly unhooked survivors a temporary shield, letting them take an extra hit. For killers, the meta was all about slowing the game down. Hex Ruin became the go-to perk, making generators lose progress when survivors weren't on them. This one perk became so essential for killers to have a fighting chance that the entire early game turned into a frantic hunt for its glowing totem. This is where the big community divide really started to grow. On one side, you had players who saw Dead by Daylight as a fun, casual party game, a spooky game of hide and seek with friends. On the other, you had a growing number of players who treated it like a deep, competitive strategy game. These two groups had totally different ideas of what the game should be, and behavior was caught in the middle. Balance changes meant for high-level play often annoyed casual players, while changes made for fun could break the game at the top. Killers often felt weak and had to rely on the same few perks to compete, while survivors felt like they were being punished for playing well. The game's popularity was soaring, but under the surface, the community was more divided than ever. The game was bigger, but many long-term players felt like it was losing its soul, leading to its next fall and the desperate need for another reinvention.
What does that mean? Like I know my favorite thing about, like, what is my favorite thing about DBD? It changes though, it changes. My favorite thing about DBD is having fun in DBD. Yay! That sounds pretty good. What would I attribute DBD's success to? There's no other game like it. I hope that's the right answer. I don't know. Is this like a test or something? Bro was reading at a first grade level. You guys are so mean.
The years between 2020 and 2022 were defined by behavior's ambitious attempts to fix the game's deep-rooted problems. The developers were clearly listening and started rolling out some of the biggest changes in the game's history. One of the biggest wins of this era was adding cross-platform play in 2020. This was a massive quality of life upgrade that brought the PC and console communities together, slashing queue times and letting friends on different systems finally play with each other. It was a technical feat that made the community feel more connected. The developers also started the Realm Beyond project, a long-term plan to gradually overhaul the game's aging maps and character models. The most dramatic changes were aimed right at the stale meta. Behavior unleashed massive perk overhauls to shake things up, nerfing longtime staples like Self-Care and Hex Ruin while buffing weaker ones to encourage more variety. The goal was to break the rigid meta and get players to experiment again. However, these good intentions sometimes backfired spectacularly. The infamous gen kick meta emerged, where killers were encouraged to repeatedly kick generators with a combination of perks like Eruption and Overcharge, bringing the game to a grinding halt. Matches became a tedious slog of killers patrolling a few generators, while survivors felt like their progress was constantly being erased. It was a miserable time for survivor mains, and honestly, it wasn't that much fun for killers either. This period also showed just how fragile the game's licensing model could be. In late 2021, the Stranger Things chapter with the Demogorgon, Nancy Wheeler, and Steve Harrington was removed from the store because the license had expired. While people who owned the content could keep it, new players were locked out. This was a huge blow as Steve and Nancy were fan favorites and the Demogorgon was a beloved killer. It was a harsh reminder that the Horror Hall of Fame could have its exhibits taken away at any moment. A failure that was later fixed when the content returned, but at the time it felt like a major loss. Unfortunately, this became a reoccurring issue as the Hellraiser chapter was also removed from the store for new purchases in April 2025 due to its own licensing issues. Despite the success of crossplay and the graphical updates, the game felt like it was in another fall. The meta was volatile and often just not fun, and the loss of major licenses left a bad taste in everyone's mouth. Dead by Daylight needed another blockbuster moment, another rebirth to bring the magic back, and once again, salvation came from a legendary franchise.
Kovo, I asked Makope, right? Would you change? It's in a King video. The King did an interview in Montreal with the DBD dev team, and it's like, devs answer content creators' questions or something like that, right? And my question was, would you change anything about the early stages of DBD? And the way that Mako answered it, he was like, no, I would not change a thing. Because DBD was so lucky, like, it was like such a specific set of circumstances which let it get exactly where it is. But would you go back and change anything? No, because that means that the game might not be where it is today. What the actual fuck am I looking at? My favorite thing about the game is how unique it is, I think.
Just as Michael Myers had done years earlier, a new horror icon arrived to give the game a massive boost. In June 2021, Behavior launched the Resident Evil chapter, and it was a phenomenon. This wasn't just one killer and one survivor, it was a full-blown crossover. It brought the terrifying nemesis into the fog, along with two of gaming's most beloved heroes, Jill Valentine and Leon Kennedy. Nemesis was a unique threat, bringing AI-controlled zombies onto the map that created a whole new layer of pressure for survivors. The chapter also came with a new map, a faithful and sprawling recreation of the Raccoon City Police Station, though emphasis on sprawling because it was way too large at the time. The impact was, once again, enormous. Resident Evil is one of the biggest names in horror gaming, and its inclusion brought a tidal wave of players, shattering the game's concurrent player records on Steam. It was a massive success that re-energized the community and introduced Dead by Daylight to a whole new audience. This second Rebirth marked a turning point. While new licensed chapters were still the main attraction, Behavior started to focus more on improving the core player experience. They announced a quality of life initiative, a dedicated effort to fix long-standing community complaints. This initiative brought a flurry of much-needed features. A new HUD gave players more information, showing the status of their teammates. Perk and character loadouts were finally added, saving players countless clicks. The developers also began to implement systems to combat frustrating player behaviors, like anti-face camping mechanics and stronger anti-tunneling measures that gave unhooked survivors a temporary speed boost and endurance effect to give them a fighting chance. While the community continues to debate the execution of these features, it showed that Behavior was serious about tackling the game's most toxic elements. The success of Resident Evil had given them the momentum, and the focus on quality of life showed a commitment to the game's long-term health. Dead by Daylight was reborn again, more popular than ever, and with a renewed focus on its players.
That's a great question. My favorite thing about the game and what I would attribute success to. I mean, the big thing that I think I would attribute success to is probably Myers, to be honest. I feel like overall most people would agree the game probably wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for getting that license like super early. It was within what, like 2 months of the game releasing. I mean, it wouldn't be my favorite aspect. The obvious one would be Blight, but I feel like that's a bit too simple.
We're now in the modern era of Dead by Daylight, a time that has seen the game reach incredible new heights while still wrestling with its oldest demons. The game has welcomed over 60 million players into the fog, a staggering number that cements its place as a global multiplayer giant. Technically, the game has never been better. In 2024, Dead by Daylight made the huge leap to Unreal Engine 5, a massive project that brought big graphical improvements and modernized the game's foundation. And in July 2024, after years of requests, full cross-progression was finally added, letting players unify their progress and purchases across all platforms, a huge win for the player base. The parade of horror icons was continued, with massive new licenses like Alien, Chucky, and Castlevania. Recently, we also got Five Nights at Freddy's, which finally brought Springtrap into the game. As well, we received a Walking Dead license and even a celebrity appearance during a Behavior stream in the likes of Chandler Riggs, who played Carl. Even though we all know how that stream went, on paper the game is an undeniable success story. However, old wounds remain. The core conflict between killer and survivor mains is as raw as ever. Many killer players feel the recent balance changes have left them feeling weak and punished for playing aggressively. Recent public test build introduced changes to tunneling and generator aggression that caused a major stir. The new anti-tunneling update gives unhooked survivors a whole suite of protections, including speed boosts, endurance, and a new elusive status that hides their scratch marks and pools of blood, among other things. While meant to stop tunneling, many killer players argue these changes are way too heavy-handed. Worse, a controversial change in the beta penalizes killers for hooking and killing a survivor too early by disabling their ability to damage or block generators. Many see this as a direct punishment for doing what the killer is supposed to do. These changes, plus other anti-slugging changes, have only intensified the debate about whether the game is becoming too survivor-sided. Quitting is also a major issue, as it has been for years, with players leaving if they don't like the killer, the map, or what their teammates are bringing. Behavior tried to address this recently, but to mixed reception. This highlights the constant tension around balance. The age-old debate rages on: is the game killer-sided or survivor-sided? The answer, it seems, changes with every patch.
What do I like most? It's unique, massive potential with very interesting, kind of like looping, 50-50s and kind of mind games at them. Nice bit. What do I not like about it? It's entitled cult-like community where people are like politicians, people are fake as fuck. Like the community, I'm not a massive fan of. And also the devs listen to the wrong people, because this game could be like so much more. Like, to say that the devs have made so many wrong decisions and the community has pushed them in such a bad place, you still can have really fun moments. So it just shows you how much potential this fucking game has.
After all these years of rises, falls, and rebirths, one question is at the heart of nearly all of Dead by Daylight's problems. What is this game? Is it a competitive, balanced esport, or is it a chaotic, fun-fueled horror party game? The truth is, it's both, and that's its greatest strength and its most persistent weakness. The party game argument is easy to see. It's the thrill of hiding in a locker as the killer walks by, the jump scare when Ghostface yanks you off a generator, and the pure chaos of playing with friends screaming in a Discord call. It's about creating horror movie moments, not about winning or losing. For this huge part of the player base, balance is less important than fun. They want to see their favorite horror icons, they want to be scared, and they want to laugh. Then there's the competitive game side. You can see it in the game's skill-based matchmaking system, and in the incredibly high skill ceiling of killers like Nurse or Blight, who take hundreds of hours to master. It's in the complex strategies of looping and the deep knowledge of perks needed to compete at a high level. For these players, balance is everything. An unfair mechanic isn't just a small annoyance, it ruins the competitive integrity of the match. This identity crisis is what drives the endless cycle of rise, fall, and rebirth. Behavior is perpetually trying to serve two masters. When they make changes for the competitive scene, like nerfing a popular fun perk, the casual audience feels left out. When they add a wildly fun but maybe unbalanced killer, the competitive community cries foul. Every major update is an attempt to thread this impossible needle. Strong anti-tunneling mechanics are a response to a major frustration for casual players, but competitive killers see them as a frustrating limit on their ability to apply pressure. The constant perk overhauls are an attempt to create a dynamic meta. They can force casual players to abandon their favorite builds. This eternal balancing act is why the game so often feels like it's falling, as one part of the community will almost always feel ignored. Yet it's also why the game is always ready for a rebirth, because the next big chapter or the next major update is always just around the corner, promising to finally get it right.
I'm going to answer the second question first. I attribute its success to the fact that it continuously pumps so much new material into the game. With that being licenses and things of that nature and stuff like that. I think obviously a lot of people show up for some of the big titles that come to the game. And in terms of favorite thing about DVD, well, I mean, to be fair, I found my beautiful woman through this game, and also we have a child now. But if you want me to keep it just strictly inside the entity's realm, Lethal Pursuer. Next question.
When I asked Otz for his response, he gave me a very thorough reply. Well, there's a lot to say about why Dead by Daylight is so successful. Licenses, one of the early 4v1 games, etc. But one of the former Dead by Daylight developers made a really good post that I generally agree with. It has some great points. As for my favorite thing in the game, it's really a combination of 1, the time I spent on it feels worth it because the game is very much alive with a very vibrant and active community, and 2, the sheer amount of fun combinations of perks, add-ons, playstyles, it always creates chances to come up with a fun and creative build or idea. That's ultimately what got me hooked on the game. The post Otz linked is one you may be familiar with. It's a post by one of Behavior's own developers for 6 years named Almo. Giving a very brief summary of the post, he believes other asyms have failed because they often try to fix what they perceive as flaws in Dead by Daylight. These flaws are often key to what makes Dead by Daylight work. Almo's post uses the game Video Horror Society to illustrate this point, which I also have made a video on if you want more information. He argues that it failed because it eliminated core gameplay mechanics like tunneling and camping, the very things Dead by Daylight players complain about. This design choice made it incredibly difficult and miserable to play as Monster in Video Horror Society. They were constantly fighting 4 players with no way to effectively deal with a single difficult player. An interesting point Almo makes that I want to point out are the differing goals between the killer and survivors. It's not one side eliminates the other like in VHS, it's one side kills the survivors and the other side escapes. Almo makes a great point that this allows the developers to give both sides what they generally want without gutting the other if done correctly. The killer can feel unstoppable without making the game unbalanced. He concludes by emphasizing that while Dead by Daylight has its issues, it's fundamentally a fun and brilliant game, and competitors fail by focusing on fixing its perceived flaws instead of trying to make a game that's more fun to play. Dead by Daylight's journey has been anything but simple. It's the story of a buggy indie darling that defied the odds, a game that stumbled and fell only to be picked up by its passionate community and a parade of horror's greatest legends. It has gone from a clunky, niche title to a global powerhouse, all while navigating an identity crisis that continues to this day. The cycle of rise, fall, and rebirth is just part of its DNA. For every frustrating meta, there's a blockbuster chapter. For every balance controversy, there's a game-changing update. Behavior has created a game that is constantly evolving, always chasing an impossible perfect balance between competitive integrity and chaotic fun. But maybe that chase is the point. Maybe the constant tension is what keeps the game alive and the community so passionately engaged. But what do you think? After all these years, is Dead by Daylight a competitive game or a party game at its heart? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this trip through the fog, consider subscribing for more deep dives into the games we love. I don't like asking for subscribers, as I mostly just enjoy making the videos. That being said, I've been getting a lot of requests for me to remind people to sub. I hope adding the request at the back end of the video isn't too annoying for everyone. But what do you think the future holds? The future of Dead by Daylight is brighter than ever, with a movie in the works and a roadmap filled with new content. There's so much that we've yet to experience in the realm. The fog is always expanding, and the entity is always hungry.